future leaders of America, aka America's man's men. Why do I say future leaders of America? Why do I address you as that? Well, because you men among millies, you men among all those brainwashed millennials, you're the only ones who haven't been brainwashed by the fake news. I know what some of you were thinking. I know what some of you think. Peter, this is spin if I ever heard it. This is bull. No, it's not. It's not bull-loney. It's not malarkey. I'm going to tell you why. We're going to give you a quick lesson in the history of fake news. I know I've said this before, but just to review, you don't have control over your own. I'm going to edit this a little bit. Sorry, we're going to scratch that. You don't. Controlling your own mind is an art form. Controlling your own mind is an art form. Let me illustrate this point. When the Beatles made an hour and a half commercial for the first time, I don't know what their first one was, but they made a bunch of crappy ass movies. Again, sorry for the profanities. Crappy donkey movies. And when all the screaming girls left and all the seats were wet, we'll use your imagination to fill in how that happened. Now, those girls didn't go into that theater thinking, oh, well, I hear the Beatles are in town, and what we do is piss the seats when we watch Beatles, because it's just what you do, right? You go to the theater, and it's you make sure to drink plenty of water or other stuff. They jump on the Beatles car anyway, and all of this not because, we all know the Beatles can't sing, right? Now I'm going to give them just a little bit of credit, and that credit is for what I would call the fact that the Beatles exercised an element of fusion. Now, fusion takes creativity. Fusion takes steeping the mind in the long-suffered form of music, which is classical. Okay, rock and roll is no more music than rap is. I know that's a little bit of that's a bit much even for me to say. Rap, you've dispensed with the melody entirely, so you're screaming obscenities. I've done it before. I don't want to do it again because the truth is, again, all of us, if you listen to enough rap music about the suicide solution or murdering a police officer, then in your very worst moments, when you're tired out, I just did a killer. It was a killer workout, considering that this is America's man's man, not completely at my best, but we're going to kill this anyway, because that's what we do. America's man's man. We don't have a choice. America perishes if we don't do our job. Future leaders of America, America's man's men. So listen up. Okay? Listen up. We don't have. There is a. You don't. The media has gotten you to think. Again, I'm trying to talk to you in your language. So as much as I hate to refer to American idiot or that very sad little man, George Carlin, the old guy who was just ticked off and he just said every irreverent thing he could, and people call it comedy. Even these idiots who made this stuff, who made the concept of American idiot, my someone very close to me who smokes a lot of reefer used to listen to them. Now I didn't listen to the likes of that stuff, and coincidentally, I do coffee. I'm high on life. I'm high on the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's straining today to make this a good show for you, but I have faith that God will make this a great episode for you. And it's not a show. It's not a show primarily. This is the one piece of art, just like Fall Musical is the one musical of our age that isn't only entertaining, but it will also make you smarter. It will deprogram you, as opposed to, you don't understand what Fall Musical is and why Hollywood hates it so much. My chief aim in making fallmusical.com, both the movie, the stage play, and the complete franchise, which you can learn more about at fallmusical.com, can preview the first chapter in the online digital book, kind of an experimental work that we're trying. The Fall Musical team is working on, as well as, by the way, sign up on americasmansman.com. There's a bar at the top. Just put your email address in and click subscribe, because the FANG companies are going to kill this channel if you're watching this, if you're one of the stragglers still using Google, Twitter, or any of the FANG companies. And all of us are to some degree, because it's very difficult to avoid, but that's all besides the point. The point here is my sole mission, my main mission, and it took me a while to arrive at this, because for a while I was one of the Christian movie crowd. I was thinking, and I appreciate the efforts by Sherwood Baptist Church, the Kendrick brothers. I mean, they tried really hard, and art is not. I wouldn't even call. I would be so bold as to tell you that film is not art. Film is propaganda, principally. I don't know if you can make a movie that's not propaganda in some form or another. But, however, that's what I try very hard to do. I'm fully aware of it, and this is a full disclosure. I know that the internet analysts are going crazy with America's Man's Man videos, because, like that one woman, she's very, very good. I recommend her highly. I can't think of the name of her at the moment, her thing, but she's a nurse. I think she has some psychology training, and she deconstructs Mark Zuckerberg and other world leaders' television performances, and she breaks it down. She does like freeze frames. She says, well, this is how you know that this person is lying. She did one of Bill Clinton when he told America, I did not have sex with Miss Monica Lewinsky. And then she points out, I'll never forget, she does this thing where she freezes the frame right after he says that in the news conference. And he does this smirk. He goes like, and she freezes it, and she said, that's it. That's how you can tell. This is what a lot of people do when they lie. Now, many people can manipulate their own bodies to an extent, but you can only lie to people with your body for so long, because you only have limited resources. And I can't lie to you. I cannot, not in the age where everything is everywhere. And I can't, I'm incapable. I would get called out on it so fast if fallmusical.com were anything but what I promise it to be. And even the Bible says, don't promise by earth or heaven. Don't take oaths by earth or heaven. Even though I think there's some legitimacy to that in a court setting. The Bible, Jesus says, let your yes mean yes, and let your no mean no. So that when America's man's man, or any of you future leaders of America, America's man's men, so that when you people, what do you mean you people? All the program people are saying, so that when you people, when you future leaders of the land of the free, the home of the brave, say something. Otherwise, you can't lead anybody. If you're not truthful, if you're not open, and it's such a difficult world to be open in, because anyway, I want to stay on topic here, because there's so much wisdom that God has given me, the God of America, Jesus Christ. That's why we do this, for God and country, America's man's men, and that's why all of you watch this, whether you realize it or not. But my purpose here is to free your mind, because like all the proverbial frogs in the boiling pot, you've probably heard there's a and it's not an expression, it's too long to be an expression, but there's a common story, there's a fable about, we'll call it a fable, I suppose, for lack of a better word. There's a fable, too short to be a fable, but it's a fable about there's one frog, and he's thrown in a boiling pot of water, and he jumps out real fast. He's like, oh geez, that's hot. But then there's another frog who is put in a pot of, say, lukewarm water, okay? And it feels kind of good. But then slowly, the pot is boiled, and the frog never jumps out, because he's acclimated slowly over the span of a long time to the slowly changing temperature. It's undetectable to the frog, so the frog, with an autonomic nervous system, perhaps not as sophisticated as ours, if one at all. A little out of my element in the terminology there, but you get the idea. The frog remains in the pot as it slowly boils, and eventually is killed for his lack of ability to consciously recognize, ouch, this is hot. His what do you call it? When the doctor bangs your knee with the little thing. I don't remember that, my doctor doing that. But anyway, it's the I haven't talked about this in a while, so my medical terminology is not all there. But the point is that our natural systems our natural nervous systems can only they're only capable of so much. And so that's why God gave us conscious brains and the Word of God and the Constitution of the United States of America, in order that we may be about diligently the task of studying what at least a couple of millennia of men and their women have discovered. Say, well, you may not want to eat that food. In their books, this is what real science is. Real science, which, by the way, was all designed to better serve God. Fake scientists have hubris. They believe that they are God, and they invent things like birth control in an attempt to control, to re-engineer the women in their lives until they turn into men. And they don't realize that there are, obviously it's not a good idea. It may not seem obvious at the time, but now we're living it. Again, staying on task, we don't have control. We don't have complete control over our own minds. There are, geez, Pete, what do you mean? Are you saying that you don't have complete control over your mind? Are you a psychopath? Let me tell you something. It's those people who don't consciously think about this, in the still of night, who don't take time in silence every day to meditate, to pray. It's all of these people who don't pay attention to the nuances of life. As again, the greatest generation knew all this by rote. They were taught. And they were taught in the form of biblical parables during the time of the greatest generation, almost a century ago now, but during that time, and for every generation of Americans before them, youngsters in schools were taught real life lessons from the Bible, not fake news perversions of evil from the fake news media, which has, and again, you need... The media has taught you that you know everything. Again, that you're an American. This is how we come about the syndrome of the American idiot, because nobody has poisoned Americans' minds more than our own fake news media, our own infotainment media, that unholy axis of evil, which is the FANG companies. Jeff Bezos, yesterday or the day before, lying through his teeth at the Alfalfa group meeting. I know they call it an Alfalfa group. But lying through his teeth. People assume that because I saved and actively manage the Washington compost, which attacks Trump every day, that I have some ill will toward the man and his mission. But really, it's more complicated than that. And that's what they say. It's a stupid cop. It's a Comey-esque cop out. No offense to you. Very valued members of law enforcement whom we respect tremendously. See, I just realized I never thought about that before. Cop out, like what does that mean exactly? Anyway, Bezos out. I don't know. I'll think of something clever, or one of you will. But the point is that you don't have complete control. None of us has complete control over our own minds. And this is so we're gonna. So I want to deconstruct. You can't get this anywhere else, folks. This is completely breakthrough, cutting edge theory. I haven't even written about it in cutting edge theory and application for the present antisocial age. Can't remember what I called it because it keeps changing so quickly every day. But which is a real article. You can read some of my reflections, which have led to this point. Previous generations of Americans who didn't have television, they used to reflect. They used to read things. They used to, not be like, at the dinner table. They would commune with their family members. They would have conversations about what was happening. In the workplace, they would have conversations about how the communist Democrats weren't such the communists trying to unionize their workplace, really weren't that nice guys. But eventually, of course, they relented to federal pressure, and now the federal government enforces atheistic communist union forces. I know. I just alienated a million of you who are America's man's men. But the truth, because you're all working hard as I am. A lot of commentators talk about being from the, back when I was a farm boy in Illinois, we used to go out on those cold mornings and milk them cows. And cows don't give milk. You got to work for every drop of it. You all take this for granted. See, a lot of the Dems are doing it right now. It's like, I'm not a rich Democrat. Don't worry. I'm not rich like Bernie Sanders, the guy who wants to, burn down Milwaukee and the rest of the country with the help of the fake news. I'm not a rich Republican. I'm a Democrat. What did he say? He said what's their excuse? I lost my train of thought there. I'm not a shoot. What did they say? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I'll bring it back if I think about it. Sorry about that. But you get the a lot of commentators, a lot of talking heads on TV. They say that they're middle class, and they say that they know what it's like to work a working class job. But I'll tell you what, how many people out there, what other internet breaking, PewTube destroying, my videos, my episodes, there was a thing called PewTube, and my episodes were number one, solid. Gab 2, it was featured on Gab 2 until the world realized that Andy Torba had very good intentions, but he wasn't able to pull off his mission, which is why we have societyhub.org today. You want to get on the waiting list now for your Interview America's Man's Men, because you do not want to miss out on the thriving community of patriotic, God-fearing Americans, America's man's men, and our women. You don't have to be, one of the fans of this episodic binge. Have another Netflix episode. Ooh. Did you see what they did on Netflix? Oh no. She pulled a naked. She went naked. She was naked. And all of you are like, oh? We don't have control over our minds. We don't have complete control over our minds. And it takes a degree of humility, which nobody in the fake news media has, to realize that even they are being brainwashed. Because if you think about it, and I do. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to paint these my colleagues, my former colleagues, in the fake news. My fake news colleagues, we'll call them that. Like Laurie Kirby and Rod Fitz, and Steve Ducey, and I don't want to mischaracterize them as people who necessarily have a very malicious intent, and because there are a lot of Americans who have reacted violently to the degree of manipulation that the fake news has had to offer, and illegally, and I don't stand for that, because I don't believe it's the way that we do things here in America. But it takes a certain humility that, now I went to, I attended, I didn't attend, I killed, I coming out with awards. I won awards and produced the original college musical at Franciscan University, listed by the Young Adults Foundation as one of the top 10 conservative colleges in the United States. So they know a little bit about conservatism. Yes, they are mired with a little bit of Catholic dogma that they kind of trip over a little bit. And yes, as I was scared to death by one of the professors who was one of my classes that I was responsible for getting on one of my many awards at Franciscan University. One of them was for dancing, by the way. I know, you wouldn't expect it. America's man's man, right? But they have a pollution, they have major. I mean, you think China's bad? Steubenville is, maybe it's not as bad as China. Who knows? But it's pretty bad. You don't want to. They got to move. It's a great mission. Apart from the Catholicism and the pollution, they got to move that place to somewhere else. And I have lots more to say about Catholicism, namely that Catholicism serves children better than it does adults, which is why you kind of learn the Catholic thing when you're a kid, but then when you're an adult, you kind of run the other way because you realize, well, gee, there's no possible way an adult could live like this. And those who try, well, we know what happens to them. I'm not talking about this is why so many Nancy Pelosi's end up killing babies and saying, oh, this is such a religious procedure. It's creepy what happens to people who try to maintain two naturally conflicting, mutually exclusive ideals. Another really good thing that came out of Franciscan, that there's a contingent of Catholic. It's not originally Catholic, because a lot of my commentaries regarding the evil woman manipulator, of which I call it women control. A lot of people call it birth control, whereby women take a regimen of hormones and it makes them grow facial hair and makes them look less attractive and fatter in the wrong places like a man, and ultimately makes them incapable of providing fertile ground for a child, and makes them complete bitches, to be frank. I'm sorry about the language, but again, we're trying to time, because I have a limited time, you have a limited time. Again, I'm working a job right now. You have to keep in mind, I'm actually working a job. So some people say, oh, when I was out there growing up as an Illinois boy, freezing, going out to the outhouse because we didn't have a bathroom and stuff. You're watching it, man. You're watching it play out. And anything can happen. Anything can happen on americasmansman.com. But the purpose of all this, be it the explanation of Bill, the recounting Bill Clinton, and then there's a classic example of how we don't have conscious control over our minds, and how we need to be educated. We need to be educated, and we need to be educated faster than the rate of technological advancement. Because if you're not being educated as to the nature of technological advancement, as quickly as technological advancement is happening, you are going to be ripe for brainwashing by the fake news media. You will click. You will be one of those people that Ted has bragged about. These technology education design or technology entertainment design, pseudo religious, but really satanic, technologically deterministic. Really, churches of Satan, cults of Satan is what TED Talks are, and that's the damned truth, because because the practice is damned and they need to quit it. I know the run-on sentences here. I commend you for following them, honestly, because here's another thing that you may not be aware of. When Thomas Jefferson or when Abraham Lincoln got into a debate, he would speak in these long, flowing sentences, which you are incapable of following, just like I'm using now, probably better, because I'm not going to say I'm as eloquent as Abraham Lincoln, although maybe kind of in the neighborhood. You can't. Again, you may think that sometimes I'm rambling, or he's so incoherent and he's going on another tangent. First of all, I go on tangents sometimes because there are things you need to be filled in on. The media, one of the premises of the media, and this, in the way of context, you need to read Amusing Ourselves to Death in order to kind of begin to get a handle on what I'm saying now, kind of, sort of. But I'm going to try to make it simple so you can follow even if you haven't, which is always a dangerous premise. I know, it's very cerebral, but this is welcome to thinking, America's man's men. You haven't thought in a long time, so we're awakening your mind, and you're going to take the effort. You're gonna grab a $10 latte or whatever it is, and try really hard to follow along and take notes because the truth is, just like Neo in the Matrix, you have not fully used your mind. And you haven't fully used your mind because you live in a culture which has told you that because we're really smart. It's from a Nickelodeon cartoon, and this is what they call educational television. Someone told me when I was wearing one of my kind of 70s striped shirts that I looked like Steve from Blue's Clues. I've heard a lot of rumors about him, so I don't want to repeat them because I don't do that. But anyway, so because we're really smart. There's positive thinking, and then there's weird and practical thinking. And the thing is, again, I'm trying to help you get a grip. I'm trying to help you think for the first time because you have been taught what to think. You have been like those the babies in Brave New World, another book you must read if you are to be one of America's man's men, one of the future leaders of America. What they did is it's kind of like Sesame Street. They put these babies in in a bed where there was a little speaker, and all night long they would repeat essentially corporate training manuals for how to function in America. So they'd say, well, you, like, I'm translating a little bit here for if you haven't read the book, but basically, you are a middle-class cocky pants wearer, and you will wear cocky pants for your whole life, and you will like it. You are already starting to enjoy wearing cocky pants. Isn't it fun to wear cocky pants? And this is in Brave New World, Aldous Huxley's ingenious prediction of the way that the world would come out. And by the way, this is closely tied to Amusing Ourselves to Death. So if you read both Brave New World and Amusing Ourselves to Death, I believe it's all part of the success syllabus, which you've already gotten by subscribing your email address on americasmansman.com at the top of the screen, clicking subscribe. But I'm really trying to teach you how to think. And part of thinking means that, it's like when you're hungry, and maybe your stomach will start to growl. You don't have control over that. But your brain is involved somewhere in the process. And if not your brain, parts of the nerves, which some modern psychologists contend that your nervous system is all kind of in a weird related way. It's not, you can't separate, well, your brain's in here and then the nervous system kind of is everywhere else. We don't think, I hate to say this because it's so awful, but many, how feminists will sometimes say that guys think with their dicks. Anyway, case in point, or in the case of it breaks my heart, really, what the Beatles, not just the Beatles, but Elvis, with their non-music, with their disgusting noise. And again, it had nothing to do with the fact they were good singers, because they couldn't sing. The Beatles did not sing. They warbled in a really nasal British accent, and then they got all funked up with Indian crap, and that just, forget it. It's hard to go down if you have as low of an opinion of the Beatles as I do, and I know them well, and I'm one who was taught that the Beatles are revolutionary and there's music, and it really isn't. The one thing I give them credit for is infusing classical music in there, and that was something that's largely to the credit of their one of their producers, and not the Beatles themselves. The Beatles were puppets, like the Hollywood puppets, like the fake news. They invented some stuff themselves, but they were largely like your run-of-the-mill fake news anchor, your talking head, communist at a communist news network or PMS NBC. They just they memorized the thing, they did their thing, and that was it. and I don't want to dwell on the miserable Beatles, but they used, but where they, I guess the point of all this to illustrate the point that they, just like rap music, look at me, I'm talking like a millennial, just like rap noise or rap crap does today, they simply reached for everything that was considered obscene and unholy at the time. Basically, like, if I preached a sermon on here in which I told you that it would be totally harmless, but that I really need you to try to focus on my erect penis, or something, insane. And that's essentially that's it. That's basically all the Beatles did. Morally speaking, that's the equivalent of what they did. All of this to illustrate. Here's another illustration. We'll move away from the satanic Beatles, who John Lennon claimed are more popular than Jesus Christ. This is messed up stuff for any God-loving, God-fearing, God and country, America's man's man. I know you're thinking about my. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to illustrate a point, and it's for a good reason. So stay with me. I'm trying to get you to think, and sometimes, if I make it all cerebral, if I explain everything in academic terms, I'm going to lose you all, because you're thinking, oh, gee, this is a conspiracy theorist, he's just going on and on. But if I illustrate the point well enough, and I do so in such a way that's edifying enough of your dignity, then I'm going to do it in such a way that we awaken your conscious mind when you are triggered, and that triggering was intentional, of course. How could it not be? And you don't have control over how you. If I were to just, oh my gosh, should I? Okay, I'm going to do it. If I were to just whip it out right now on the highway, just unbuckle the, no, just, totally. If I did, your blood pressure would start to rise. You would feel scarred in some way. I don't know, maybe in a good way. No, probably not in a good way. The majority of you, because we men can only save that one, right? Anyway, so sorry. I am so sorry. Moving on. You don't have control over how your mind reacts to things, and this is why angry, retarded, conservative radio hosts. By the way, I have a lot of respect for people who do a good job with it, namely the ones at the top. You know who they are, and they've done a wonderful job. If you feel the rush, and it's amazing. But there's a retarded radio host in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, on the talk station or whatever. Every morning, he says everything in this stern tone of voice, which sounds like this, and everything he says. It's Jeff Cooner on 680 AM. Listen to him sometimes. He's funny to listen to because he doesn't have any heart. He simply says everything like this. Guess what the Democrats are doing today? We're going to talk about, like, you're retarded or deaf. No offense to either, and I'm so sorry if that wasn't intended at either of those parties, but that's what it's like. We're trying to blast through a lot here, and that doesn't help. I don't do that because it's stupid. It's stupid, and it takes no talent. It's reacting, which is exactly what communist program, the fake news, is designed to help you do, and it only feeds your anger. It gets you all riled up. And then, like in that movie, I think it's called Network or Network News. I get them confused. There's so many of them in the 70s. You have this news anchor who goes ballistic on the set and says, we are all hypocrites and all this. And they were right, by the way. But he just he starts spewing anger rather than tackling this, because again, my purpose is not to trigger you, not to get you riled up, because that may help to ensure that Trump gets elected, which, I mean, we know it's going to be a landslide for our good President Donald Trump, but that's, again, the fruits are temporary. I want to, again, my purpose here is to help you to think, to decondition you, to recognize when someone is trying to trigger you, because all millennials, that's what they always say. The millennials all throw up their hands, and the colleges too that they go to. They say, "Oh, no triggering zone. This is a safe zone. Nobody gets triggered." And that I don't want to trigger you. That's not the primary goal. You're going to get triggered listening to all this because you're learning to think for the first time. Just like when I mean this in complete respect. When a child steals gum from the store and they get a slap on the hand, that's like they don't. How else are they going to learn? How else are they going to know that what they did is wrong? But at the time, the child's just like, ouch, what was that? And this is millennials, millies, okay. So this is a safe space, if you will, where you're going to be triggered, but we are going to use that responsibly. The fake news triggers you, and then dumps and while you're at your most vulnerable because you've been somewhat scarred by what amounts to really a news threat on your life. Well, gee, the Iraqis are going to bomb America. North Korea is going to. Never mind that it's total malarkey and intended to just psych you up and put you in a frazzled state so that you buy whatever they're advertising. I was stressed out, but then I discovered Bear, which limits your chances of a heart attack in certain situations. Well, how about just not watching the fake news, turning off the fake news? That will limit your chance of getting a heart attack, and it will. Because again, it may just be propaganda, but that propaganda, just like a movie, you've been to a movie that's made you cry or laugh, it's instinctual. It is why can't I think of the word? The knee thing with the doctor doing the, why can't I think of the word? It's a reaction. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. As we perform a real middle class job and deliver this excellent wisdom which God has loaned to me, which it is my privilege and honor to share with you, as we help to awaken you to all of your conditioning. I can't decondition you. I cannot awaken you. You who, and by you, I don't just mean the millies, I mean all of America, boomers too, because Walter Cronkite was their god. They're just like Twitter is, if it's on Twitter, it must be, it's like, I can't believe they said that. I'm going to tweet back, and that's how Twitter, that's how twat makes its money. That's how the axis of evil, the FANG companies of Silicon Valley make their money. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, and Netflix, and Twitter. Faggot. So in other words, yeah, there's going to be some triggering here. Yes, you're going to be on the edge of your seat, and yes, some of the things that I say won't just be. Some might make you laugh. Some might be, geez, does this guy have it all together? I mean, is this guy going to lose it? And the truth is, I know what I'm talking about. I say all of this with zero fear of error, as one who has both. First and foremost, studied the great American Christian tradition, which is America, has studied society and psychology, and has specialized in not only the art of infotainment per the fake news, but the profound and yet invisible effects, invisible to the conditioned, which is you, the effects that it has on you. Just taking a mental pause there, because we just went through a lot. Just take a moment. If you're taking notes, just take a breather for a second, because we have yet to get to the bottom of this. So. A quick fake news lesson. Quick lesson in the way fake news operates. Because, again, the major mistake that even my professors at so-called conservative Franciscan University, they were more. Unfortunately, they were under the manipulative spell of the fake news too. They were also brainwashed. Again, it's not just millennials. It's just that we are brainwashed a different way because we caught on to what the evil fake news anchors were doing, and. We've got new technology in Silicon Valley. FANG companies and Twitter are just brainwashing us, using a slightly different permutation of the idiot box television to brainwash us in a different way than our fathers and our mothers and our grandparents were slowly brainwashed. And it goes all the way back to Benjamin Franklin's papers, which he didn't even make any pretense were about opinion back then. However, in yellow journalism, I focus on I focus on the last century because because most of you have no context. You have no historical context because you were indoctrinated rather than educated by your fake news. You were told what to think rather than how to think. You were programmed by your union public school teachers or government school teachers, who they're all unionized. Most of them are unionized, and this was an intentional seed of evil that was planted by communists, and that excuse me, otherwise well-meaning Americans, because I'm trying to get to the brainwash here. So maybe you've never questioned what you learned in the evil, atheistic, communist-led communist school system. And it wasn't always like that. We learned the Bible in school. Years ago, our grandparents learned good information. They prayed in public schools. They had all the ingredients of a successful life, of self-introspection, all the things I'm trying to impart to you right now. This idea that, if someone triggers you, even the fake news, you maybe count to 10, or maybe you recite the first 10 words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Just that. Slower. Count to 10. If you're worried and can't fall asleep, count your blessings instead of sheep. It's beautiful, melodic. Now that's art. It's art because it doesn't just jot and titillate your soul for the wrong reasons. It does have that element of triggering. However, it uses that moment of your subsequent vulnerability in order to implant in your subconscious a valuable lesson that you may not have opened up to any other way. Like fallmusical.com, which is more long-suffered and more artistic than anything that this generation is remotely familiar with, for a multitude of reasons. But here's where the fake news often... Here's the problem with all these talking heads on television. What they don't do, what they don't teach, even at the so-called conservative places like Franciscan University. And one of my professors, I was actually asking him for a recommendation one time because at the time I wanted to be a fake news anchor. I'm like, I gotta get into this. This is what you're taught. You go where the job is. Which is why I'm so familiar in this working class job, which just happens to involve a lot of road time. And plus, I wouldn't miss you guys for everything because I love you folks, America's man's men, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart because I know that the future of America rests in our capable hands. So anyway, this fake news reporter for a local paper, which of course is going the way of every other local paper because we know they're liars. He didn't know that he was lying, and he said, well, I'd like to give you a recommendation and say all good things about you, except he kept bringing up this irrelevant Brave New World book in class, and you really got to stay on topic, and it's like, I don't understand something, and no, you don't understand. I'm not going to name him because he does mean well, and so many fake news. Laurie Kirby, Greg Jensen, they all start with the right intention, but the path to hell is paved with good intentions. And this is the fundamental. I think this is the fundamental fake news premise that is omitted even by well-meaning, even people who call themselves Christians at Liberty University, Bob Jones University, all these places that are about training up fake news journalists all at once. Well, we all know that they're dirty, rotten liars. Well, maybe there's something about the premise, the primordial foundation of fake news, art and science, which is flawed. And here's what it is. Most people approach the study of fake news history with, just as I'm attempting to connect with you, the advent of the technology behind it. So I was like, well, we start the fake news history. We start the history of news, if you want to call it that. But if we give it the benefit of the doubt, we call it news and don't call it fake news for a moment. We start with the advent of Benjamin Franklin and yellow journalism. Yes, they were sundry. They were bad, malicious. They really just wanted to sell papers by printing a whole bunch of gossip. Henry David Thoreau says all this too. So these are not original ideas so far, but I'm trying to paint the context that you're missing because you think that television represents reality. The news represents reality. Because I've made a very strong claim, and will continue to make this claim here on AmericasMansman.com and wherever you're watching this episode, as long as I'm allowed, as long as they don't cut the cord. You're better off if the fake news reports something. And again, I'm trying to illustrate the case, and it's taking a while, but again, you need context that they don't want you to have, that they can't cover in a 30-second soundbite or a minute and a half, 90-second story on television. There's no way they could get to all this. And what's more, they lie about it. There's a Boston College kind of connected with the perverted sodomy Jesuits at Boston College. And by perverted sodomy Jesuit, I mean they are fuckers from hell. The Jesuit Catholicism. Again, we'll get into that in another day. Because we have to stay focused, because I got a report here to the boss man, and gonna make him a lot of money. Actually, you're gonna make a lot of money if you understand this. Your life is gonna be so awesome if you understand all of this stuff, and it's going to be amazing. America's Man's Man. Anyway, so the primary flawed premise. It's taught everywhere from Emerson to Syracuse and again, my college too. They didn't get this at my college. They're like, well, you just have to. This is how they told us to handle an abortion story. It's like, well, if you're biased, you should just say, oh, listen, I got to step back. I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm just going to give this article to someone else. I mean, it's tactful, but at the end of the day, it's a pussy thing to do. It really is, because abortion ruins women's life. It destroys anyone's inherent sense of self-purpose. And of course, you would realize that if you weren't so damned triggered by media influence, like even this device you're watching this on. As we also trigger you, but we use it for a good purpose, as all good art does. And very straightforward. This is why the leftists in Hollywood, MGM, their motto is art for art's sake. And what they really mean by that is, we don't have a motive one way or another. We're just making great art, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a good message or a bad message. That's just their way of sneaking incendiary, fake, fearful triggering into your heart and abusing the privilege of having you alone with them, the creators of the art, in a movie theater or in pornographic Netflix. All the Satan shows on Netflix, all the witch shows. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. Netflix lawyers saying we're here and we're queer, so take it up the ass with their new Adam Sandler Halloween movie. Adam Sandler now trying to be a serious actor. Movie Magazine Day! Give me a freaking break. Anyway, I knew someone who dated him. I can't talk about it because it's just. She made a good. It's a good choice to not live with this. Could you imagine living with Adam Sandler? I've heard so many stories about it, but this is not a tabloid. This is therapy for you. This is opening your soul to the nuances of that all Americans knew once upon a time. This is the old story. Anyway, fundamental premise of fake news education, which all of these fake news anchors are trained in today, by the way. It doesn't matter if you're at Biola, again, a fake Christian college, and or the very, of course, the leftist ones. Even the place I went, which none of them know this. None of them know this, and there's no excuse that amusing ourselves to death shouldn't be in that curriculum. By the way, the author of Amusing Ourselves to Death was an NYU graduate. So if you think this is crackpot conspiracy theory, this is a guy who knows. This is the most credentialed man in the industry, and of course the fake news anchors don't bring it up because it calls their bluff. Who does recommend it? Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons. And he writes as a recommendation for the book, which they put on the back of the book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, guilty as charged. Basically, yeah, we're fucking with your mind, and you're going to take it, People are like, oh, Simpsons, brilliant. Well, it's not really brilliant to watch The Simpsons. I'm sorry, it's just not. It's just, anyway. Fundamental premise, the thing that's wrong with it, and I'm probably going to have to elaborate on this later because I'm reporting to the boss man as we speak, but the problem with most media indoctrinations is that they're still caught up unconsciously, maybe not intentionally, but they base their they start their history with the advent of maybe, say, the teletype, which made newspapers possible, or even the first broadcasting station in first commercial broadcasting news station or whatnot, first classical music broadcast, the first transmission of something, and that's a backwards approach. I'll tell you why. It's a backwards approach because it puts technology first, not people. Okay, it puts technology first, not people. Now, granted, all the academic fundraisers, all the gurus who are working at the college, all the people working the donation lines at the colleges, like Franciscan University is included in this. They're all the stakeholders in the college, the teachers that want to be paid, that the president has to answer to. All these leftist, places that take your money for a bad education generally. And Franciscan University is one of the best places there are. Again, they need to move it the hell out of that polluted piece of shit, which decreases your life expectancy. And it'd be great if we could free them from the shackles of Catholicism. They're on their way. They're part of the charismatic Catholics. It's a tar baby, like Mitt Romney likes to say. It's a theological tar baby. But hey, so is cuck evangelical dumb. You folks are worse. Real quick, by the way, the one thing that Franciscan and evangelical dumb gets right, only in pockets like Franciscan University, where real men and real women keep the trains running on time. And we told the world that John Kerry, in that rapist Kennedy tradition, was a bad dude and got George Bush elected, which, I don't like him either, but he was the lesser of two evils. They got this one thing right in pockets, and this is something that the Christian church has always stood for, including, my episode about birth control and how it destroys women. Theology of the body in Catholicism and the quiverful movement. Now, the fake news media, of course, has sought to defame the quiverful movement, which is basically, it's for natural childbirth. Submission, wifely submission to a loving and kind husband, within checks and balances, of course. Fake news media got hold of it, and they totally capitalized upon the angst and the triggering that they themselves did, and they totally destroyed. They totally, well, if you're among the uneducated, if you're not one of America's man's men, you fell for it. But this is authentic Christianity. Men, there's nothing a woman really wants in her heart more than to have a baby, and they're being scared from the time they're a little kid. The doctors say, "Oh, you got to start taking the birth control." But I'm not. I'm waiting until marriage, and they will too, given good men in their lives, good women in their lives, given a good church family. It's like, nah, you better start on this birth control regimen anyway, which actually makes them more likely to have STD experiences because it makes them act more promiscuous, i.e. makes them act more like a man because it's hormone control. But we're way off topic, and we got to end this. So anyway, real quick, the main point here. Every single media education, every single communications program in America, with the exception of like your Neil Postman, who isn't with us anymore, sadly, they all predicate the foundational philosophy of media and society upon, some of them will take jabs at it, and we need to be more media literate, but they don't get the heart of the problem, and that is that people should come before technology. People should come, and it's a very difficult, it's a humble approach to take, because sometimes it means you're not going to be as profitable as normal, as if you just blindly trigger people and then feed them more and more and more moral sludge, dumping twin towers and terrorists in the country who don't belong here, rapists. That's right, rapists like the Kennedy family. Creating a hotbed of rapism. Yeah, how do you like that? I just invented that word, like the Kennedys were famous for. problem with media as a whole and media education, again, I'm not judging, again, because it's one of the responsibilities I have as a Christian, and it's because I have through careful study deprogrammed a good amount of my own. I was not as programmed as the rest of the masses, and I'll explain that later. I have the benefit of a lot of wisdom, which again, it's my purpose to impart to you. That's why I'm not as susceptible to it, and I was able to through study and persistence deprogram myself, and I'm helping to deprogram you whether you realize it or not as you continue to keep up with America's Man's Men at americasmansman.com. Talking about a mouthful. Anyway, so the problem with media education and what the fatal flaw, the Achilles heel, is that it puts, if they were honest about what news actually is, not fake news, because fake news is the electronic appropriation of community. You have to go back further than the first newspaper. You have to go back to what historian David Barton, American historian David Barton, calls the original Anchormen in America, the original people you got your news from. They didn't have a camera. They didn't, certainly at first, they didn't publish their works. They didn't publish their diatribes or whatnot. They didn't publish their sermons, although some of them eventually did, and that's some of the evidence that David Barton has for this. They're called election sermons. Maybe you think because of your programming by the fake news that somehow pastors have always never said anything political at all. It's like you go to church, separation of the church and state, which is not in the Constitution, by the way, as presidential attorney Jay Sekulow will tell you, all the way to Jesus Christ, all the way to rapture. Not that I necessarily believe in rapture, but that's besides the point. They were pastors. They were people who, unlike the profiteering anti-American terrorist hawks who run the Associated Press today, these original anchormen were people in your life. And they weren't qualified for their job because, hey, look, I can use a microphone, or hey, I can create interesting visuals like this here. Or hey, I can read off a teleprompter. Look at that. I'm such a skilled guy. I have a team of fake news pawns regurgitating the Associated Press and whatever the hell else I feel like saying. No. They cared more about substance than style. These are pastors. So they weren't qualified for their jobs the way that fake news anchors are, which are basically, okay, will you say everything and go along lockstep with everything ABC News tells you to say? So help you God. Oh, my conscience, I can't breathe. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. Shit. As the ABC, CB, all the fake news. This is the test. This is the real de facto test. They won't ask you, flat out, but this is how it works. I know, because I was one of the ones who said, fuck no. I'm not going to be a fake news anchor. But this is how it works. Basically, will you go along with the news agenda and be a team player in your industry and fucking over America for the benefit of terrorists, rape, sodomy, and every manner of evil, which makes for great television to fuck over the American people? I'm sorry for the language, but I'm very passionate about this, so I do apologize for the language. Not for the truth, though. And this is the test. This is the test you have to pass to be a fake news. That's one of the tests. And second, you have to be able to say things. You have to basically speak. You have to be able to appropriate an Ohio farmer, which is standard American English. In Ohio, Pennsylvania, that part of the country, that is the region where, like in the movie Anchorman, the girl there is saying, I took the time to slave over practicing my standard American diction. And that's why fake news. I was genuinely sincere when I told Laurie Kirby once. I said, "Geez, you have a heck of a diction. You are very good with the whole standard American diction thing. You do, and it's modeled after this kind of center of America, the breadbasket, where people talk standard American English, which is the most familiar, the most endearing to most of us, and should be. We're united by culture, and culture is founded upon the English language, which is why we should only speak English in this country, and at least as a first language, everyone should be required to learn English if you're in any kind of taxpayer-funded education setting. Just like we all read the Bible once upon a time, and children didn't shoot each other. But that's not the point here. The point here is that if you're going to be honest, if you're going to be an honest teller of news, okay, we're assuming that there is such a thing as something besides fake news, because God knows that's all we get. Because remember, I've made this claim a million times, and I will make it repeatedly. I will make it ad nauseum. Ad nauseum. Am I pronouncing that correct, NBC? They have a test for all their anchors. So anyway, you got to pass the NBC test, and you got to be a yes man who lies at the drop of a bucket. No smiling, no grinning. You have to be able to read all the shit that they feed you through the teleprompter with a straight face. That's what it takes to be a fake news anchor, ladies and gentlemen. Scout's honor. So problem with most fake news education, the way that they get you, or the way they kind of slide you into those lies in the first place in the educational process. Again, professors motivated by the fact that if they don't train people who get jobs, then the professors are going to take it up the wazoo from the stakeholders, from the donors, and they're saying, well, why aren't people getting jobs in this department? We got to work on that. And of course, if they've taught amusing ourselves to death in public school, which is, it's basically, it tells it like it is, like I'm telling it right now, and obviously developing further, then no one would really want to, because they'd have such a painstaking realization of the evil that they're doing, and the fact that they're causing terrorism, that they are in fact party to the anti-police violence we've seen in the last couple of years, aiding and abetting by means of propaganda, essentially deifying the burning of the Twin Towers, or helping, again, aiding and abetting the Bernie Sanders field operators' goal, which was reported by Project Veritas, to burn down Milwaukee, and then and he said, well, that will of course spread. Once we burn down Milwaukee, everyone else around the country will see this and will spurn copycats. And again, that's of course the big assumption there is that the fake news, communist news network, CNN, PMS, NBC, etc., will report on it, will show this and be like, well, we can certainly understand why this would be a violent reaction. So or this would be a viable reaction. So if any of you, feel like burning down a city, you're not alone. I mean, they wouldn't say it like that, but it's pretty darn close. If you go back and watch the so-called Black Lives Matter business, it happened in Chicago, and they fanned it into flame in every other story after this. And you can read about my reflections about that on americasmansman.com, how media creates anti-police, anti-American, really just every manner of hell you can trace back to the fake news. And I believe that, having studied it thoroughly as both an academic and as a fake news anchor who worked for a guy who got put away because their character is just so low. So anyway, the original, if you want to tell the real story, as I'm doing, as America's fake news anchor is doing, but this is the truth, is that pastors, the AP has something they call news judgment. You want to work as a WBZ news editor who said she's going to bite my fingers off, and oh geez, we can't report anything bad about the Kennedys, the rapist Kennedys. Kate, what is her last name? Oh, I'm sorry, I really can't remember, because she should be held accountable for that. Kate something. Anyway, you can look it up on LinkedIn. She worked at BZ. I can't remember her name. Peter Casey presiding over all this, and of course, iHeartRadio, which is Clear Channel, dumped him like a hot potato when they took over, because this is dead wood. We don't really need him around. He's retired somewhere, just like the fake pastors. Anyway, if you're going to tell the real story of the history of news in America, you have to go back to those newsmen who didn't do it for the glory, because they weren't going to be famous. The potential was always there. We remember people like Jonathan Edwards, but we remember them because what they said was so profound that their morality, their profound wisdom warranted it. Just like America might remember America's man's men following this right now, because you took the time in the quiet of the night, or whatever you're doing right now, to really analyze yourself and try to figure out, well, why, how did this all come to be? And I'll tell you, I'm talking to fake news educators now, places like Franciscan, people like Wayne Lewis, the local newspaper reporter. Listen, you got to start with the real. Again, this is from historian David Barton, who has copies of the original election sermons that these pastors wrote. Because, again, if you're among the brainwashed, you think, well, pastors have always, since the beginning of the country, separation of church and state. Pastors never say anything political, etc. And it's this. Of course, Trump says he's working on it, and God bless President Trump. He will be reelected, and we're happy for it. The Johnson Amendment, the Lyndon B. Johnson Amendment. I think he was one of the better presidents. But long story short, if you're going to talk about news, and if you're going to really put news in context, there was some hawk anchor that I think I want to say Brokaw. It was one of those guys. He was a BC graduate, and I watched him talk at the perverted Jesuit Boston College, which is just trying to be perverted Harvard today, because Harvard lost their way a long time ago. Anyways, listen, he said, what does a reporter do? What's the chief job of a journalist? And he's like, sounds like it's a big, profound statement. Well, we report what happens in context, or something like that. We tell people what's happening, but we also provide that historical context for it. That's a lie. Now, I don't think that he was trying to lie. I think that in his mind and heart, he believes he's actually giving people historical context. And they all do. All the fake news anchors at CBS, PMS, NBC, they all think that they all think that you're probably giving him too much credit. Some of them really think, and I'll bet that he really thought that he was providing context. Maybe, I don't know. It'd be a hard sell for him if he didn't actually believe the lie, but it's a lie nonetheless. Again, you can be sincere. Great. I cheated on you, honey. Well, at least you're sincere about it. So, anyway, maybe he was an NBC anchor, the disgraced one. I don't remember, but he went to BC, and I heard him talking. He said, well, this is what we're supposed to, but they don't actually do that. If they did this, we'd go back to the beginning of news. And it was those first pastors who came to Plymouth Rock, who established America. Even Columbus evangelizing the New World, even though he didn't know where he was. Got to go back to the original pastor's word. And I got to end this because otherwise my silly iPhone will... Well, I'll lose this whole thing, and you won't get to see it. But got to go back to the pastors who were hired on the qualification, not on the basis of how well they could manipulate technology and put on a titillating show, but rather on the basis of their character, which you knew because you lived in their community, you worked, you slept, you interacted, you did business with these people. So those are the original newsmen, if you will. We don't call them that, but again, Dave Barton, American historian David Barton, is more accurate than any of the others. I saw this at the New Hampshire Renewal Conference, where I also heard Newt Gingrich talk about how federal government corrupts everything by separating the taxpayer from where that money is actually spent. This is David Barton speaking at the Renew America or New Hampshire Renewal Conference, and he's still saying it in his wonderful organization, Wall Builders. I hope he's not a Mormon, but anyway, regardless, he's right. The original anchormen were the pastors, and they spoke to their communities, and they were qualified to. They were sensitive to the needs of their communities, and thus they were not fake news anchors, because they cared about you and they used actual news judgment, which is what you can only get by living that long, painstaking Christian life, pondering these hard questions like you are doing right now by investigating this AmericasMansman.com broadcast that allow you to be that sane person who's not triggered all the time, who's not constantly reacting, but it actually thinks, well, gee, I want to be for God. I want to do everything I can for my God and my country, and in order to do that, I got to put the effort and the time into figuring it out. And I thank you for doing that today here at AmericasMansman.com. AmericasMansman.com. Thank you so much for investing the time and energy into helping as we deprogram our minds together at AmericasMansman.com. Subscribe at the top of the screen, because this party ain't going to last long elsewhere. AmericasMansman.com. And thank you so much once again, America's Man's Men.